can you keep a secret?
Changing hearts and minds.
Changing hearts and minds.
Changing hearts and minds.
Changing hearts and minds.
Changing hearts and minds. Changing hearts and minds. Changing hearts and minds.
Changing hearts and minds.
Welcome to Change Your POV podcast. You're listening to Changing Hearts and Minds, a show about reviving the warrior spirit and remembering the past to improve our future. I'm your host, Jeff Adamick. Let's get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, am I totally screwed or what? You're funny.
I want to discuss all this behavior.
Let me out of here!
Hey there, Changing Hearts and Minds listeners. So this week, guys, I got a little bit of a different show for you. I get a lot of requests from people to, talk about some of the war stories and kind of like a throwback to the No Shit There I Was episode that you guys may have heard me and Eddie do a couple months back, actually quite a month back. I went out and I found a really good friend of mine. His name is not going to be mentioned in the show because he has a job that actually still requires him to be a little discreet as to what he does for a living and putting his name out there. So in the show, you'll see that he'll have a different name placed to him, and we'll explain that in the show as if it's live. Be advised, these stories that you guys are going to hear are 100% true. We haven't changed any names of the people. We're still referring to them by the names we called them. You just will not hear full names, and I will not be giving away any kind of let's say, sensitive information about missions or anything like that in any of these shows. But this is going to be a nice, fun episode where you're just going to hear some cool, funny war stories and how two guys who were really, really good friends and warriors who fought together, no matter how long they've been apart, can still connect back to each other no matter how long it's been. And so, without further ado, I give you me and Zaphod, as we call him in the show, the No Shit There I Was, Jeff Part 2. It is the opening day of college football season. I am sitting here in my living room, and just a little bit of info into how I actually record these episodes. I'm sitting on the couch in my living room. My wife is at work. My son is back home from college for Labor Day weekend. He's upstairs in his room sleeping. He'll probably walk through the house in the middle of this episode and ask me what the hell's going on. But on TV, I've got ESPN Game Day going on. That noise in the background you just heard is my buddy Zaphod Beetlebrock. From the North Thunder Fusiliers. Okay, guys, I got a buddy of mine on today, and we are going to do what you've heard in the past. We've done the No Shit There I Was episodes. I think the last episode on Change Your POV Network was myself and Dwayne France. Good Lord, look at me. Myself and Eddie had done a show about this almost half a year ago. Where you guys talked about my experiences with having a rock star destroy my hotel room. That was a good episode. We had a good time in there. But today's episode, we got one of my buddies. And the reason why I wanted to have this episode was for two reasons. One reason is these No Shit There I Was episodes are great. We have a really good time doing them. It's always fun to get these stories out there and have these moments, refreshed in our minds. But also because me and Zaphod, the reason why I'm calling him a different name, guys, is he has a job currently. He has a job that it requires a little bit of discretion with his name and everything like that. So this isn't one of those he's pretending to be a cool guy. He legitimately has a job where it's not in the best interest of him with what he does for his name to be all over, media out there. So we're gonna, probably not refer to him by his name. And if I do slip up and refer to him by his name in this show, you'll never know it because I'm gonna edit it out. This is a good example. I have not spoken to Zaphod for, technically voice-to-voice talked in, 3-4 years, brother?
Yeah, it's been a while, man.
Yeah.
Text messages here and there when we end up kind of in the same AO. I think the last time I was sitting in an airport having a meeting and you were like, what, two miles down the road?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
What this show is going to show you guys, and this is more, I think this show is going to be more it's more beneficial to the non-veterans out there who are listening to it, because you're going to see that when us veterans say that, I got this buddy of mine or this friend of mine who, I haven't spoke to him in years, but every time we get together, it's like we were never separated from each other, and we just jump right back into being the same kind of friends we were beforehand. This is going to be a good example of that, because there was no phone call made before this episode. Texted Zaphod about a week ago saying, hey man, you want to come on? He said yes. He's on the show right now, and other than the 5 minutes before we started recording here, me and him have not spoken with each other in 2 years, voice to voice. We're going to do our No Shit There I Was episode. And first of all, not giving stuff away, how you been?
Dude, I've been doing real well, man. Staying busy, just kind of a grueling schedule. Obviously, we've talked about doing this and had to push it down the road a couple times because just my schedule is crazy. So, but it's all going really well. I'm having a really good time doing what I'm doing. So, trying to keep everybody up with everybody on the limited social media that I have, But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, for the it reminds me, it makes me laugh a little bit because I've got those of you who follow me on social media, some of you realize that I have a show account that is out there for everyone to follow. It's got my name, Jeff Adamick plastered all over the social media account. Having said that, I'm no longer in the service. I no longer even have a clearance anymore. My clearance is expired because I don't need one for the job that I have, nor do I care to keep one. So I'm able to keep a social media account now. But my old social media account, the one that I had for years and years beforehand, much like many of the people in our job, or my former job and the job that you currently have, we don't keep our real names on our social media accounts. Like even you and I, years ago when we were on teams together, we had these social media accounts that had just massively wacky different names. I think I was Abraham Froman for the longest time.
Yeah, the Sausage King of the Midwest.
Yeah, Sausage King of Chicago is
Chicago. Yeah.
Am I not who you say? Are you saying that I'm not who I say I am? It's normally what I tell people when they're like, "Oh, you're Abe Froman." Yes, I'm Abe Froman. And
Absolutely.
If you don't know what that means, I for shame you for not a good steward.
How does anybody not know who that is in this day?
People don't know, man. I got people that be like, first of all, I get the Abraham Froman because I take it a little step forward. I want to be called by my full Hebrew name. But even if you didn't know who so if you don't know who Abraham Froman is, got it. You might just be a little bit not paying attention. But if you don't know who Abe Froman is, and you're listening to this show right now, first of all, you need to Google him, and then you need to never tell anyone that you didn't know who he was. If you haven't seen the movie that the character comes from, you need to go watch the movie because there's all kinds of problems in your life if you don't know who Abe Froman is.
I can't even imagine that somebody wouldn't know that. But then again, I run into stuff every day that it's just like, oh my God. You poor unfortunate bastard! What kind of life have you been living?
Who has sheltered you from the greatness that is modern day media that you don't know who someone like? And no one's going to know who Zaphod Beetlebrock is unless they've read the book or seen the movie.
That's very true.
And if you haven't seen that, go ahead and Google that shit because that guys, to be quite honest with you, my next I won't tell you guys what my current cover name is for my regular account on Facebook is, but we don't negotiate with terrorists. That's pretty much the best way I can put it. I'm going to use Zaphod Beetlebrock as my cover name coming up here pretty soon, so everyone's going to think on Facebook that I'm you when I change it over to that name. Once I go through my 6 months of having to have the name I have now, and then can get to change it up. I've been wanting to change it to Zaphod Beetlebrock forever. I'm either going to do that or I'm going to change him to God, it kills me. I can't remember the name of the character that I thought of. Oh, from the movie Real Genius. I was going to Laszlo Hollyfeld. I was going to change my name to Laszlo Hollyfeld.
There you go. Then they're going to look back on this and be like, this dickhead spent an hour talking to himself on a podcast.
How did he do that though? I mean, here's what I did. I recorded my voice as it is right now for an hour, and then I played it back, called in, and then did the Zaphod Beetlebrock voice.
A little bit of modulation, a little bit of auto tune,
little Midwest voice over it. So Zaphod is from the Midwest originally, and that's about all you'll get out of me personally. So Zaphod and me have chewed some of the same ground over in places like Iraq. Our big claims to fame are earlier on in the war. Our unit was together during the invasion of northern Iraq, and then a really, really crazy deployment to Orgun E, which was a fire base in RC East in Afghanistan. Good Lord, that trip, man. There are stories that we could go. I can't even believe that. First of all, I can't believe we survived that trip.
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know how we did, man. There were so many instances where, I mean, inches and seconds, and
yeah. Anyone that's ever knows me and Zaphod in real life, they've always heard that I've always said that Zaphod was a teammate, brother of mine no matter what his job was. But he was, so full disclosure, he was a direct support guy for the teams. He wasn't an actual tabbed guy. That's what's going to make some of these stories even better, is because I remember, and this, getting right into it, I remember the first time that I noted that you weren't just a support guy, was the middle of an ambush, shooting back, and here comes Zaphod walking out in the middle of open, just point of aim, point of impact, out in the open, next to one of the interpreters, just plowing away out in the open while rounds are kicking up around his feet, just not giving a shit. And that was my introduction to, having your tab does not make you a badass. Being a badass is, you're probably a little more humble about it, wouldn't tell people about that stuff, but that to me is what always got me, was how much everyone else was hiding behind stuff, and there you were out there just shooting, kind of with this look, and you're turning around looking at, what are you pussies doing? Hiding behind stuff. We're Americans. We're Americans, goddammit.
That probably wasn't the best decision in hindsight, but I mean, it's that trip. So much crazy stuff happened on that trip that, like you said, I don't know how we survived that thing.
Yeah,
I really don't.
One of the things, and I'm gonna let you go ahead and tell the story on this, but so that way we can get it out of the way. But I kind of got an unfortunate nickname during that trip. It's not really unfortunate. It's kind of cool now, only because I'm alive. But
it followed you beyond that trip, though.
It followed me all the way to when I got injured.
Yeah.
So when I finally got injured to the point where I had to get out of the military, it was because of this. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you the floor there, Zaphod, and you go ahead and tell everyone the story of the RPG magnet.
So there's actually two stories that go along with this when we were thinking about doing this show that popped into my head. And so that particular fight, I think, is when we were coming. I think where were we at? We were up for like 3 weeks, and we were coming back in.
We were at Helm's Deep, wasn't it? Is that what we called Helm's Deep?
Yeah. That's when we were in this valley that we kind of called. We set up this Ron site that we called Helm's Deep, and so we're coming back in, and what were you? Vehicle 2, I think you were in. I was in 3. We were right behind you.
Yeah.
We had a couple Hiluxes pushed out, and then we had our main column, and we're coming through, and we've got this like 90-degree turn that we have to make in this valley. Just really horrible spot to be in. And I'm looking from I'm in the 240 in the back of this GMV, and Dan's on the 50 in the turret in that one, and I've got Mark with me. We're driving, and all of a sudden I look up in this cut, and it's the only little compound that's in this cut. And I'm watching it, and all of a sudden I see these women and these little kids just take off running.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
telltale sign of shit's about to go down.
Right. And I'm like, okay. So we make this turn. First 2 vehicles make the turn. It must have been Bobby was up in the Hilux, and then you were in the vehicle behind it, I think.
Yeah, the Hilux with Bobby, and it was in front of me. And guys, just so you know, we're going with first names. We're not going to give out last names out here, but just try to follow along with the first names. You'll understand. Those will be names that you've never heard before.
Yeah. So I think Bobby takes the left, and then your GMV takes the left. And as soon as you got out of sight is when they popped off. And we were in a real shitty situation because what did we have? We had a mortar section from 10th Mountain, I think we'd picked up along the way, that was with us.
Yeah, that was their sergeant major was with us, for God's sakes, or their first sergeant, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was for that one. Yeah, so they had a couple trucks that were behind us, and of course, they're on the other side of this ridge line. So we can't set them up because they're just they're firing into the blind, and we didn't trust them to do that with you guys maneuvering on the other side.
Right.
So when we did finally work our way up and get, I think we got 4 of the 6 vehicles in that fight. We didn't get the whole complement in that fight ever.
No. There's actually, I would say that there's probably guys who are in the column with us who have no memory of the fight at all because they were so displaced from the actual engagement that to them it was just the sounds of explosions and gunfire off in the distance, and they have no connection to the fight at all other than being in the same geographical location.
Yeah, which I would have absolutely hated to be them in that position, because you're basically sitting on your hands, not being able to do fuck all. But so when we did finally get those vehicles up around that corner and into the fight, it was just, kind of sheer ledge up. We had very, very limited maneuverability. So we're trying to move these vehicles around. We finally get some of the crew served weapons into the fight, and the AMF get down, and we're maneuvering. And there was one dude that I just couldn't get to. He couldn't have been more than 40 meters up above me, and I couldn't get the 240 on him because of the terrain. It was driving me nuts. We're trying to get to this guy because they had, what did they have? Did they have PKM up there?
They did. They had RPKs and PKMs
Yes.
for that. And we only knew that because the intensity of the rounds coming in had to have been some kind of a belt-fed machine gun. There was no way that it was just an AK on full auto.
No, it was a very high volume of fire that was coming in. And I'm looking over, and I can't remember who else. I think Ken might have been in your vehicle with you. But so these guys.
My vehicle was me, Lee, and
Lee and John were with you in that.
Lee and John were with us in that vehicle.
Okay, so they've dismounted. They're trying to maneuver, and Jeff is behind the vehicle at a decent offset, but there's like a wall behind him, right?
Because it's like a wall of rock.
And I'm watching this, and I can't see the guy, but I'm watching the RPGs, and these freaking RPGs. It didn't matter where he moved. It was like nobody else existed in the fight except for Jeff and this freaking dude with the RPGs. Because every time they go off, they're going to him. And at one point, I look over, and the thing, it blew up right behind him on the wall and like mashed him into the truck. And now he's just laying on the ground, and I'm like, oh, that's a great day right there, because we had made it through that. We had made it through that deployment with no injuries at that point. Which
we were 3-4 months into it, no injuries.
Statistically speaking, I don't know how that happened.
No, neither do I.
I really don't, because it was nuts. So, that knocked you unconscious right there. That was your that was your
probably my first TBI probably.
Yeah, probably. Of many. but yeah, that was sort of the birth of the RPG magnet right there, because literally every RPG that dude fired was only at Jeff, which didn't make any sense, because tactically speaking, there were much better opportunities for him to engage targets that would have given them a little more initiative in that fight. Which
is what technically in the situation it kind of upset me, because what the fuck did I do to that guy? I mean, that I know unless it was one of the friggin' cooks from the fire base who I told really makes shitty rice or something. I don't know what that dude's hard on was, where he had to shoot me with an RPG. But yeah, I went from the front of the vehicle to the back of the vehicle, and it was funny because I think at one point I go to the back of the vehicle, and Lee, he was one of the Echoes. He was a common guy. I think he turns to me and he goes, "Get the fuck away from me." He goes, "These RPGs are trying to get you." And then I was like, "Oh, thanks." And I kind of go to the other side, and you and Chief were back there. And that's when I remember later on was when I kind of came around and John was like pulling me up against the tire after I got knocked out. I could hear over the net. I could hear Chief calling back. He's like, "Look, I think we just lost our Junior Bravo." And he said that like over the net. And I was like, "Oh man, that sucks. I'm the Junior Bravo." Like, I had that moment where I'm like, "Oh, I'm dead." Me and Zaphod then devolve into some long, drawn-out conversation about personal stuff that I won't bore you guys with. We come back around, though, in the conversation to talk about another guy that we had worked with named Bobby, and how he became the unofficial bullet magnet of the same trip that we were talking about. Let's join ourselves back in there with Zaphod talking about Bobby the bullet magnet.
No. Bobby was the second part that I was going to go with, because that dude, though, to this day, all the work that I've done in and out different companies, I have never seen a firefight follow one man even more than the RPGs followed you. And there was a fight on that same deployment, actually that same trip, that same mission,
Yeah, it was later on that day, I think. It was actually the same day.
Yeah, later on that day, that entire firefight followed that man.
And that was
just that man.
He got shot in the knee, didn't he? And then that was when
he
he
did.
left, and then he came. So good dude. I went through the Q course with Bobby. He was a great guy, really funny dude. And I say it like he's no longer with us. He is still with us. He's out there causing problems.
Yep.
But go ahead, Zaphod. Tell us about when the bullet magnet, because we had the RPG magnet and the bullet magnet both in the same team.
So back then, I mean, back then we were dealing with AMF still, and obviously we knew that was a porous force, right? These guys would disappear on leave and they'd come back and sell their bullets and do. I mean, we knew there were problems with the AMF, but we were dealing with what we had to deal with, right? So everybody knew who Bobby was. Everybody. Our guys knew who Bobby was. Their guys knew who Bobby was. Shitheads knew who Bobby was. And for whatever reason, whoever was out there in the mountains that day, those guys knew that Bobby was there. And supposedly the rumor was that his price was bigger than our price, right?
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah, we had, what was it, $10,000 for us? It was like $15,000 for him, just because he was Bobby.
Yeah, so I don't know what the deal with that was, why they had a hard on for him, but that's just how it was. We get ambushed again, and same type of thing. We're maneuvering the vehicles, we're dismounting, trying to move up, and I'm looking over, and every time he moves, their entire base of fire moves with him.
Yeah. He was another one. We were like, get the fuck away from me. Go back over there.
Yeah. And it's the same type of thing where I'm watching and I'm like, why are they focused so much on him? I mean, it gave us loads of opportunity to maneuver, which is great for us. But again, tactically speaking, like, what the fuck are you doing? So I'm watching this guy, and every time he moves, you can watch it follow him. All of a sudden he goes, and there's this little rock formation. He's going to move over to it to get some cover, right?
He tried jumping over it, right? Didn't he jump over it?
He did this move that can only be described as like
Chow Yun Fat meets fucking
the love child of like young Steven Seagal and Chuck Norris. And he does this sort of like flying combat roll and then disappears from the face of the earth.
Yeah, and when we say disappears, he was there. He jumps over this outcropping. Now, the outcropping of rocks from where we were at, it would appear that he's going to get over it. He's going to hit the ground behind it. You'll see maybe his back a little bit. He's going to have to, he would have to like hunker down to get full cover from this little rock outcropping. But he doesn't. He goes over and he disappears from sight.
Like the earth swallowed him.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Gone.
Good way. Yeah, the earth swallowed Bobby. He was just gone.
And it's like, oh my God, fuck! What was over there?
Or what was over there? I thought maybe it was like a cliff which was odd because we were inside of a valley. Kind of like it felt like we were Indiana Jones coming up on the entrance to where they kept the Valley of the Crescent and King or whatever. And it was kind of a valley where there was nothing.
Dude, have you been to Petra? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've been to Petra. I went to Petra back when.
Freaking amazing!
Isn't it awesome?
It's amazing. We used to go through Amman for this one gig that I had, and we used to go through Amman and stay overnight, and we'd kick down there and look around, and it's just sorry.
No. That's
unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing that you see so many movies that have that especially that Colosseum or that church-looking entrance. So many movies use that now. I mean, you obviously have The Last Crusade, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Transformers, where you see the one scene in Transformers where they find the primes all huddled around the Matrix of Leadership, and my geek is showing. So all that stuff that's all filmed there. There's so much stuff there, man. It's really impressive. I went to it when I was stationed in Egypt back before I was a group guy.
That whole country, man. I love Jordan. I love it. We spent a lot of time there. But anyway, sorry, sidebar. So Bobby, he had disappeared from the face of the earth, right? And we continue this fight for probably another 15, 20 minutes before they broke contact. So they, at the time their TTP was they were They would hit. They would stay with us for about 45 minutes because they knew that that's when that's how long it took the A10s to get over there.
Yeah, the A10s, the saviors of. I think I could honestly say I think they're the reason why we're alive.
If they ever defund that program or get rid of the A10, I will personally fly out and punch Congress in the throat.
Yeah, I decided that if they ever defunded the A10, I was going to become a terrorist. Like, and guys, I'm kidding, NSA. I'm not going to become a terrorist, but that's the
You'd
whole
be a
reason.
horrible terrorist.
I would be a terrible terrorist. I wasn't even a very good soldier. So I mean, it was.
That's bullshit right there. You'd be a terrible terrorist.
Yeah, the A10s, they would show, and I think you're right, man. It seemed like they had the entire. Now at the time, guys, we were as far east in Afghanistan as you can get without getting to the Pakistani border, Turkestan or whatever.
Yeah, we had that one. There was the one fire base out there that we went to.
The one that was shut down.
That was shut down when we were there. That was It was open, then it was shut, and it was open, then it was shut. In Lawara.
And that's where we had Helm's Deep at, right? Remember, we went there to go look at what the firebase looked like, and so you had this place that the firebase used to be at, which was decimated, and then all the HESCO cages for the HESCO barriers were all at everyone's local houses. Like all the local people that were there had taken the HESCO barriers and used them at their houses. And the HESCO barriers, guys, are those big cages you see that they fill with dirt and rock to make up the walls of the fire bases. You see them in all the movies. Yeah,
they'd stripped every usable bit of material out of there because that unfortunate fire base was close enough to the border that they could hit it from
from Pakistan, right? They would just sit on the Paki side.
Right, depending on which border you're going with, because there were like 3 or 4 different borders depending on who you were talking to, where the border was. But yeah, they could hit it from within Pakistan, and then because of the rules at the time, the guys couldn't do anything about it. So yeah, we went out to look at that, and we were the only team in that whole AO. I mean, we had there was a company at 10th Mountain that was out there with us.
Yep.
And then there was nobody for miles, all the way down to Shkin.
Yeah, Shkin was the other fire base out there. I mean, Orgun and Shkin were just we were under constant attack, and I mean constant attack.
Yeah, actually, the day that you flew it. Well, hold on. Let's finish the Bobby story first.
Yeah, let's do that
before we get too far off the rails here. So Bobby had disappeared from the face of the earth. We keep moving, break contact, we go over, and all of a sudden Bobby pops up, soaking wet from head to toe, soaking wet. There's no water in this whole grid square.
There's no country. Right? It's like I don't even know if water. I mean, you had to fight to get a gallon of water in this country. And here comes Bobby crawling out from behind this rock. He just got out of the ocean. I mean, he was that wet.
Right. So he comes walking back over, and I said, "Bobby, what the fuck, man? What happened? You disappeared." Well, come to find out, he had found the only man-sized hole full of water in the entire AO.
Yeah.
And when he jumped over that thing, he jumped right into it. And
it went above his head. He said it was above his head when he got into it.
Yeah. So I said, "So what did you do?" He's like, "Well, I stayed in the hole." It's like, okay, I couldn't get out of the hole. So what he did was he ended up the whole rest of that fight kind of 1 foot on the front and 1 foot on the back, like propping himself up off the bottom of this hole, shooting African style with his gun above his head. And I said, "Man,
God, I'm gonna have so much problems with people ask me what you mean by saying African style."
Oh, there's a great meme of a dude I think it's in Somalia. He's shooting around the corner of a house with an AK, and he's wearing gardening gloves and an orange life preserver.
Oh, can you find that meme? Can you find that meme?
I absolutely.
You got to send it to me, and we'll put it in the show notes page. I'm gonna put it. It's gonna be our image for the show. We're gonna have.
It's one of the best kits I've ever seen. Like why this dude even had like an orange life preserver. I mean, the gardening gloves maybe, but an orange life preserver.
In Somalia, you can understand. I mean, nothing grows there. Why would you have gardening gloves?
I don't know. I don't know. It's a glorious image.
It is.
And he's just killing it with this AK, shooting at nobody. So it's awesome.
And what we mean by African style is in Africa they have a tendency to fire around corners with zero aiming. So here's Bobby holding his M4 above his head with zero aim, just in the direction.
Yeah,
I mean, let's be honest. He wasn't being dangerous, and we were in no danger because all of our ambushes were coming from above. So he was shooting up towards the enemy. Matter of fact, the only person in danger of being shot by an American was anyone who was on the other end of when I was shooting the Mark 19, who may have gotten plunging fire brought down upon them, which was a total other story.
Those. Hey, and that trip, those Mark 19s did not last long either, huh?
No, they didn't. It was when I realized the Mark 19 was not built to work in Afghanistan.
No, they went down probably within the first 2 weeks, all of them. I think we swapped all of them out for 50s.
Yeah, eventually. But I had gone through every single Mark 19 the team had. I had gone through trying to get working because I'm an idiot.
Yeah. So after we do all this, and while he's waiting to get medevaced, because come to find out he had gotten shot in the knee during all of this, I'm talking to him and I said, Bobby, like, all of this is going on. You've been shot in the knee. You jump over it, and now you find yourself stuck in this hole. You can't get out. You can't maneuver. Like, what's going through your head? And he's like, honestly, man, in the middle of all of that, I look and my chapstick goes floating past my nose. And the only thing I could think of is, there's my fucking chapstick. He lost this chapstick like this 2 weeks ago. And Bobby always had this chapstick with him. He's used all the time. And that's the only thing, all of this chaos going on around him. And the only thing you can think of is, there's my fucking chapstick. I've been looking for that.
All right, guys. So there you go. There's the story of the bullet magnet as told by me and Zaphod. To finalize it out, as you guys know, many of the ways that people around the world look at Americans is through media. And there is no military units more popular than the Rangers and the SEALs. So if you were someone that knew nothing about the U.S. military and wanted to be special operations and you were foreign, where would you look to see how these guys operated? Well, you'd look to movies because the Rangers and SEALs are in a lot of movies. But what if the only thing you could look at was really bad B-movies? Well, here's what happened when we had a really hard-charging guy who was a member of the AMF, which is the Afghan Militia Forces. He was an interpreter. Tried to emulate being a ranger that he had seen on TV. Ayub, who was our interpreter, Mr. I'll shoot from a knee because that's how the Rangers do it on TV. He stops the convoy.
Prior to Afghanistan kicking off, once it started, he took every bit of the way he was supposed to operate from, not even from good ones, just from bad, like, Ranger movies.
Yeah, like the worst. Like he would watch, like, was it Uncommon Valor? The movie Uncommon Valor.
Well, I think there was a movie just called Ranger that was just horrible.
Yeah, it was like a Pakistani made film or something like that. It was just terrible. And he would watch those movies and say, this is how special operations guys operate. And so he comes walking out looking like, I mean, he was a gear queer for your ass. I mean, he had all kinds of, he had more pouches hanging off him than I mean, you could own a pouch making company. And this guy looked like Michael Jackson went friggin' Spec Ops. He had so many zippers and buttons and Velcro. And so he would stop and shoot from a knee. When it didn't call for it, he would combat roll. I mean, this guy, he did everything. I mean, it was like a comedy. It was like a friggin' comedy skit every time. But he was a badass. I mean, he would do some things that were just amazing. And it made the rest of us look like assholes because we'd be like, hey, dude, what are you doing a combat roll for? Why you got so many pouches? Why is everything, there's enough gear on you and then he would make shots that were just amazing.
Just for example, the first shot I ever saw this guy make when we our first mission together, when we went out, we go into this village.
Is this the smiling asshole?
There's 4 dudes sitting on the side of the village and they've got guns, and we pull up. And, we jump out, we walk up, and he's telling them, leave the guns and come and talk to me. Leave the guns and come and talk to me. And this one asshole decides he's gonna pull his gun up. And Ayub, in this Ranger fashion that he's created, and he used the AK-74. Yeah. So he drops
with a Leopold scope that you would put on a hunting rifle.
Yeah, exactly. So he drops to a knee, fires one shot, and hits this dude in the teeth from what, 60 yards, right?
Yeah, like without. I mean, it was so fast. There was no way he was able to aim that. He should not have been able to aim that round that well.
Right, but it wasn't a long shot, but it wasn't like the dude was standing right in front of him, right? So he
Well, didn't we not know how the guy got shot at first? Like, we're like, how is this guy pretending to be dead? Because his mouth was
Yeah.
closed, which was odd.
Oh.
He was just laying there dead.
Well, we couldn't see it until we got up to him. so he drops down, hits him in the mouth, and you know, we didn't know the dude was hit, and we walk up and we look, and it's the craziest thing. He's wearing the pizza hat, right?
Mm-hmm.
The little Afghan pizza hat. He had knocked the hat off the dude. The hat lands on the ground. The brain had popped out the back of his head and landed right next to the hat, and there were a couple pieces that were in the hat. And I was like, this dude literally, I mean, inches away from knocking this dude's brain out of his head back into his hat.
And what was funny was we would make fun of him for all these tactics, but then he would do something like that. Ayub, years later, was killed in Afghanistan, but he was a great guy.
I heard that. Yeah,
it's he really was a really good dude. He was all pro-American, and when I found out the way Ayub operated, it was what was going to happen. His story. This man's father was a pro-American. He was a freedom fighter during the 80s, and he had been captured and imprisoned by the Taliban. So Ayub dresses up like a woman and goes into prison and breaks his father out of prison. And this happens before the war kicked off, and he was living completely in contradiction with the Taliban and their rules openly, and had no problem with living in a manner where they knew he was the one that broke his dad out of prison. I mean, that's the kind of guy this guy was. It probably helped that one of his best friends was the Tony Soprano of Oregon, as we got to call him. What was his name? The other interpreter?
Oh, I don't know, but his story, looking back, I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. Looking back on it, that dude was a freaking genius.
Gangster, he was a gangster.
He was a genius, because he had gas stations in New Jersey, right?
Yeah, yep, yeah. He had his family owned gas stations in New Jersey.
So this cat, he had
like cousins who worked in New York City. Wasn't one of his cousins a New York City police officer?
Something like that. And he had, you know, him and his wife, who's Afghan from the same village. When 9/11 happened, like he had a very good life in the United States, a very good life. When 9/11 happened, he picked up, moved back to his village, and bought everything, and sat there and waited, and was like, I know the Americans are going to come. I know they're going to need help. I know they're going to need land. They're going to need vehicles. They're going to need fuel. I'm going to sit here and wait, and I'm going to give it to them.
And he was the same age as me and Zaphod. Like,
yeah,
he was not an older guy.
Mm-mm.
He was a young guy, and he ran shit. Like, when we say he was the Tony Soprano of Oregon, he was. People, he would say something, and these guys would just do, because they didn't want to fuck with him. He was legitimate friggin' gangster for the area. But he was on our side, and that's all that mattered, was he was on our side. Yeah, he wore
the traditional Afghan man jammies and the hat with that fucking awful black leather jacket.
Yeah, and then he eventually started wearing like a Nike baseball hat. I remember that when he started doing that. And he looked like he had perfect. He spoke English perfectly, but he would able to friggin' transition into Pashto, no problem. And because I was from New Jersey, and he had somehow found out that I was originally from New Jersey. I think it was right in the midst of The Sopranos being a popular show, and me and Zaphod used to watch, like, we used to friggin' binge watch, because it was right when we started getting everything out on DVD. We would watch The Sopranos, and we were like, you know what? This guy's Tony Soprano.
Yeah, it couldn't have been all that gaudy-ass giant stuff you carry with you everywhere, huh?
Oh, listen, just because my team actually has won some Super Bowls in this decade, all right?
Ouch.
Let's not, ouch. You guys went to a Super Bowl, but you lost it. But you lost it. Oh, and not only did you lose it, you lost it to one of the guys I went to high school with, Keith O'Neill, who was the special teams. He was the special teams captain for the Indianapolis Colts at the time. I went to high school with his brother and him.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, Well, at the time, I didn't know that the Keith O'Neill that was on the Indianapolis Colts was of the O'Neills that I went to high school with. And not recently, but a couple of years ago, I realized that, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then he came out with a book recently. So there's my shout out to Keith O'Neill and his book, Under My Helmet, which I recommend if you guys haven't read, and go ahead and read. It's a great book on just not quitting and how to deal with mental health issues, because he was bipolar. He was diagnosed with bipolar, and he struggled through having bipolar, and making it all the way to the NFL. Coming from a family of some legends as far as football is concerned, I tell anybody that the greatest football player I ever played with was his brother Kevin. This guy was phenomenal. His dad was a coach at Rutgers, and then eventually became a coach of, I think, Buffalo. Not of the team, the NFL team, but a university there. And his dad had coached also NFL Europe. And anyway, go get the book Under My Helmet by Keith O'Neill. He was on the he played for the Colts and won the Super Bowl with the Colts as a special teams. He was an awesome guy, and they're great dudes. The family is really good family and stuff like that. So there's my promo for them guys. But back to me and Zaphod's stories. We're wrapping up here. See how fast this time goes, man? We're getting close to the end of it here.
It does, man. It does.
Let's do one last thing I wanted to talk. Go ahead.
One thing I did when I was getting ready for this, I was thinking back in my head. You missed this part of the trip, but when I Googled, right? Because I was thinking about it, and I'm like, all the infrastructure, everything that was going on, all the building in the countries that was going on back then. Because I mean, it's been what? It's been 14 years, bro.
Yeah, it's been a long. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. When I think it's more that we hope it's not been that long.
Yeah,
because it makes us old, bro.
It's been 14 years. So when we left for that trip, that specific trip, we went to Kandahar and we drove.
Yeah, I remember that. You guys drove. That's insane.
Yeah, you remember that. You guys drove, asshole.
Well,
we drove.
I'm sorry. I couldn't help the fact that the United States Army wanted to give me an award. Sorry.
Well, that's what I was getting to. Yes, you had a very good reason because you had to go get the Silver Star. I get it. I get it.
Jesus.
How many people on this podcast have the Silver Star?
Yeah, fuck off. That is so cheap. That's a cheap move. That's a cheap move.
This guy. Let's put it that way. But yeah, we drove that. It took us, we drove 20 hours, 2 days, 40 hours straight. I think we stopped for maybe 2 hours, right? 40 hours to get there. You know, you can do that drive all on hardball in 6 hours now.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah. Well, that's US 1, or not US 1, but Afghan 1 now is built. So
what kind of bullshit is that?
Dude, that's not bullshit. We're doing good things. The infrastructure of the country is being set up. But
no, I know it's great, but
yeah, it's great. It's great that it wasn't there when we fucking drove it, right? That's what you mean?
Exactly. I definitely would have felt a lot better about that trip if it was going to take 6 hours on hardball.
Yeah, well, I just don't understand how. I mean, to this day, when I think about it, and I'm glad no one got hurt, but I'm also glad I wasn't there for the drive because it doesn't sound appealing at all. I do know that John and Ken and all them, they worked their asses off to make sure we didn't drive out. We actually flew back.
A lot of fighting on their part to get us not to drive that back because they wanted us to drive all that stuff back.
Yeah, so you guys know, Zaphod worked as part of kind of like part of the leadership section of the administrative thing for the team. So a lot of the planning and all that kind of stuff, he kind of knew about that stuff before. Like I would go to him and be like, hey man, what's going on? And he would be able to tell me what was going on because he was in a lot of the planning meetings. So he knew that we had to fight to get. I mean, we were ambushed every single time. And all right, last story. They rocketed our fire, and you can still go on YouTube. And if you YouTube Orgoon E rocket attacks, there's a massive quantity of these videos of people from the fire base who would go out and set up cameras and film the rocket attacks. And the reason why they were able to do that was because we would get rocketed every day at dinner. I mean, every day it seemed like. You knew, all right, it's about to be dinner time. Let's go get in line, you'll get chow. Or we can wait till the rocket attack comes in and everyone runs to the bunkers. And then we could walk over and get in line because those bunkers ain't going to save your life for shit.
Back then they're not the same. It's not the same bunkers that they've got now. I mean, now you've got freaking 20-foot T-walls and you've got all this other stuff. I mean, you remember when the Hescos showed up?
Yeah.
Out there. I mean, the fire base wasn't even a real fire base.
No, it was legitimate, like a safe house. It was like the building that we lived in. I had gone back some years later to Orgoon for something else, and the building that we lived in is no longer there. It got torn down, yeah, and it got torn down like a week before I went there. So I went in, and there was the remnants of where our our building used to be at. And man, sure as shit, if I didn't find on one of the walls, like our names from where we wrote our names. You know how we used to write our names on the inside of the walls? It's like, put, and we wrote our names down and everything, and that was still there. And so I took a photo of it, and somewhere I'll send it to you. I won't put it on because it's got last names on it, but I'll send you a copy of that. It's got a picture of like your name and my name. I think you, Pat, and Gino. I think it was
Gino. Man, I forgot all about Gino too. Well, I didn't forget about him, but I mean, did he get out?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I think he had his fill. I mean, and there was a lot of guys from that original crew of dudes that had just gotten. I mean, as the war went on, we became friggin' ancient. Like I got buddies now who are still in, and when they talk about the way things operate now and comparing it to how we fought back then, they talk about us as if we would talk about Vietnam vets. I mean, that's the sad thing is that it's just like we are the ancient, we are the old school way of fighting. And I ended up moving on and going to different units and stuff like that. And so those old school mounted operations that we pretty much invented almost for the time period. We came up with, and just the invasion of Iraq, we came up with stuff. So it was just all that stuff happened.
Oh, you mean like winning tank battles without a tank?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's that, but I mean that's another episode. I've told myself that I would not be the proponent. I would not be the guy that started off talking about the Battle of Debecca Pass on this show. So maybe there'll be a show about that, and we can bring you back on. You can give your opinions on that as being one of the guys who was there and saw everything go down.
I've told that story just a couple times, but every time I tell that story, or at least the pieces of it that I know, people are just like, you got to be making it up.
Well, you would think so. I mean, I feel like I'm making it up when I tell it to
nowadays, because there's enough out there. There's a Wikipedia page. Yeah. Frank wrote a book.
Yeah, one of the Team Sergeants wrote a book on it.
So I mean, there's plenty out there. It's not make believe. It's movie shit, but it's not make believe.
No, it's not. But it is one of those things where that's another show. I want to go ahead and thank Zaphod for coming on, man. I had a great time, brother, talking about some things, and God, it's been a long time since we've had some of those.
Yeah, thanks for having me, brother. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been far too long, and hopefully it won't be so long afterwards. I'll definitely keep you on speed dial, though, because we didn't finish some of the story. Yeah, I understand, guys. I already see the angry emails. You guys started talking about this, but never got back to it. You know what that's called? That's called keeping you interested. That's how we get you to come back to the next show. So yeah, you heard. I'll be getting things. Well, you started talking about this. And so, can you now finish that story? Yeah, we'll finish it. We'll finish it next time. So you'll just have to wait.
That's just how these conversations happen, man.
It is. This was a true sitting around the campfire, no shit, there I was conversation, and that I just wanted to get into it. And guys, this is just to go to show you that. All right, so guys, not the real reason, but this is realize that no matter how bad your life's going, you've got people out there that are your brothers and sisters that are always there. Pick up a phone and just call them when things are going bad. And this is a good indication of what that is, because me and Zaphod have not spoken in like I said, on the phone for a couple of years, but you would not know that listening to this show. If it's like we just got done talking to each other yesterday and we're back on the phone with each other. And what I mean, and what the purpose behind that is, we've got far too many guys out there who are committing suicide. We've got a suicide epidemic, and this show is to show you that you don't need to suffer about things all by yourself. You've got brothers and sisters out there who are gonna pick up the phone and make time for you. As Zaphod knows, you pick up the phone, he calls me anytime he needs something, and this just goes to show you that we're gonna pick right back up where we left off, take care of each other and be there for each other. And so take this as an example of why you should not fight those demons that you guys are fighting out there, some of you, by yourselves. Get out there and call somebody. Somebody will pick up the phone, and that goes both ways, guys. If your buddies call you, pick up the phone. You never know why they're doing it, and you should never be in a position where it's inconvenient, because it's way more inconvenient than the timing of a phone call is inconvenient that you weren't there for your brothers and sisters, and they end up taking the other option because there was no one there to pick up the phone. So
I had a buddy of mine post something just the other day on that, and he got a call from a friend of his, just kind of out of the blue. They talk here and there, and something clicked in him, and he got in his car and he drove 9 hours, and he went down and sat with the dude, and they had beers. They hung out for a couple days, and he was getting ready to leave, and the guy put his arm around him and gave him a hug, and he said, "Hey man, I just want you to know you saved my fucking life by coming down here. I haven't seen you in a while, but you saved my fucking life.
God damn.
So just, I mean, you gotta talk. We gotta talk to each other. We gotta talk to each other.
Yeah, because there's no one that's exempt from it, guys. I've been quite open with how things went down for me when I got out and how bad things got for me. And but bottom line is I never got to the point where I needed to make those phone calls, and thank God I didn't. But Zaphod and there's a couple guys that definitely are on the list of the people I would call first, and I believe, and that's maybe why I never got to that point, because I know I always knew that I had someone I can turn to talk to if I needed someone. That means a lot to guys who are going through shit. It does. Knowing that I have a someone to call, it helps. It really does. So there was, even though I never had to call anyone, if I had not known that I had someone to call, my situations would have been far worse, I think. Those late nights where you're sitting there struggling and you can't sleep and things seem to be falling apart around you. But I can say that with all honesty, I think that just knowing that I could pick up the phone and call a Zaphod kept me alive. And there's guys out there who don't believe that, and that's why we've got to get them to believe that there are people out there that will pick up the phone for them.
Whatever you're going through, just you got to talk to somebody. I don't care. I don't care if you have to come over here. I've got couches, I've got beds, I've got rooms. I don't care who it is. My brothers, if they need it, it's here.
Right on. That means a lot to people, man. It does. And like I said, so you guys at home are knowing, I am not saying me and him are not having a moment here where I'm telling him that I need to have somebody I'm just using him as a example of why we've got too many guys out there that are taking. If you've had issues where you've attempted, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying that it's sad that you get to the point where you have to, consider that. I would not say that people are taking a weak way out but I'm saying that there's no need to go that route. There's help out there. There's people out there that will help you. We've got to, as a veteran community, we have to help our brothers. We have to help this situation out on our own. We can't wait for the VA and for the government to fix this situation. We need to do it on our own. Zaphod, brother, thank you.
Thanks for having me, man.
Oh yeah. We will catch you next time, man. We'll get you back on here, and we'll have another showdown. We've got a lot of stories that we didn't get to that are on this list that you and me put together. So.
Oh, dude, I think we only hit maybe 4 or 5 of them. Shit, we could go for hours.
We could go for hours. All right, brother. Hey, man, thanks a lot. I'm gonna go ahead and close out. Well, guys, that's it. If you enjoyed this volume, as it will be called, of No Shit There I Was, would like to hear some more of these kinds of episodes, go ahead and send me a message at jeff@changerpov.com. Or on the Facebook page or anywhere else. Go ahead and send us a message. Let us know that you like these kind of things. We're going to give you guys the shows that you guys want to hear. I want to thank Zaphod again from across the airways for coming on and talking with me, and hope you guys got a lot out of it. A little late for the disclaimer, but that last story did have a couple gruesome things in it, but I'll make sure I put it in the show notes so that people know that if they don't like to hear about brains being blasted through the backs of people's skulls, and first of all, they're listening to the wrong set of shows, and second of all, man up, you're probably watching American Horror Story on TV right now, thinking about how gruesome that was. So, also want to say thanks to the O'Neill family for having Keith O'Neill, who wrote a really great book, which I mentioned in the show, and I'm going to put a post on the show notes so where you guys can find that book on Amazon, and I'll link all the different little things that you can find online that Zaphod mentioned about Topeka Pass. I guess I'll link that Wikipedia on there too, but you're not going to get me to talk about that openly. Maybe I'll do it on another show sometime. But all right, guys, don't oppress yourselves. Make sure that you live your life the way you need to live your life. No one can tell you what you can and can't do. You are in complete control of yourself and everything you accomplish. Don't oppress yourself, guys. Free the oppressed. DOL. Check you guys next time. All right, guys.